Good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, good evening, and other things of the like. I just realized I had my mic muted. Sorry, guys. Uh, Hello, everybody. It is Pseudo from MMOBuff in Top Drawer Episode 2, all about Hearthstone. First off, thank you for showing up. You see a really odd thing next to me. It's a
Am I now an
non-animated version of... Yeah.
am I now an odd thing? Well,
Uh...
good morning from the odd thing to everybody.
I was actually referring to the fact that we don't have you animated like normal. We just have your voice. And considering the fact that we've been having some technical difficulties with things over on the pond, or across the pond, so to speak, what I'd like to hear is yes, Mizpah is a cyborg now. And yes, Ryzen, Mizpah got hexed. He is now a 0-1 with taunt, which we'll get into soon enough. But anyway, please let me know if you can hear him okay, because if not, I need to make some modifications real quick, and I want to do that before he starts to rant. Otherwise, I might
Me
turn him down
rant?
while he rants.
Me rant never. I'm simply going to sit here in comfort, drinking my coffee in the sun. I'm not really sure what the problem is.
Well, as long as we don't have any hiccups and pops in your voice as you're talking and people can actually understand what you're saying, I think we'll be okay. But yes, we
Good.
are hearing people. People are hearing us, and that means I can stop looking down at the screen and I can actually look deep into your eyes. So, first off, yeah, hopefully, you guys enjoyed the very first episode of Top Draw that we did, where we had the folks from Feria come and discuss all things, including chicken plushies named T Rex that would take over the world. It was a rather fun and enjoyable thing. If you haven't seen it yet, hit up our YouTube to check it out. If you're watching this in the future, well, it's kind of obvious. It's in the playlist. You can watch it there. But anyway, so Miz, have you had a chance to say sleep since BlizzCon?
Sleep? Some sleep last night for the first time in about a week, it must be said. And yes, I may have the beginnings of the con cold to someone that pointed that
Oh,
out in the chat. However, that might also just be the fact that I'm utilizing an iPhone, Wi-Fi headset, and Skype to try and join in with today's frivolous merriment.
frivolous? Is that what this is to you? Oh, I see. Nah, it definitely doesn't. You sound not quite yourself.
I am so sorry.
Ah, that's okay. But yes, so obviously there's a ton of things that we could get into when it comes to TCGs, SCGs, and CCGs, which is the entire point behind Top Draw. It's a chance for us to geek out on all things card related. Now, I will be perfectly blunt. I have been busy, so I haven't had a chance to pull together the typical card news like I did last episode. However, I think the fine folks at Blizzard did a good enough job of presenting an entire weekend full of goodies for us to talk about, in specific Hearthstone. Now, since obviously Hearthstone is such big news, that's the focus of our show. And I'm kind of excited because I'm going to mention quite a few things that might make Miz go, ooh, and I'm going to probably mention some things that are probably going to have both of us butting heads like normal. But anyway.
Indeed. And I must just throw in, Pseudo, I'm not getting every word you're saying, so I'm going to have to be making some educated guesses as to exactly what you've just said quite frequently.
What do you think, folks? Should I mess around with Mizpah by occasionally words?
No. Unfortunately, right now, that'll be far too effective.
Aww, bummer. Right then. Okay, so first off, let me just state that if anyone remembers from a recent MMO Buff episode, I kind of sort of called into question one thing about Hearthstone that sort of seemed a bit weird to me, and that was the fact that Blizzard had decided to do their invitationals at BlizzCon and let people play a game in a competitive environment in a tournament. Granted, no cash was rewarded, it was just trophies and splendor. And I found that a bit odd, considering not everybody has their hands on the game yet. Now, I'm going to let you know that I have
Um,
watched it. Go ahead, Ms.
And I'm just going to say, and now that you've seen effectively a method to give a high-level exhibition of Hearthstone, with some faces that are familiar to people, what is your take now on the plan of action? Because I believe we butted heads on that one before.
It wasn't a matter of batting heads. It's a matter of it felt a little like a slap in the face to the players who hadn't gotten beta keys or been given an opportunity or a chance, so to speak, to step up to the plate and try to get themselves in a position where they could do an invitational. I still don't agree with the way that it was handled in that respect. I can, however, view it from the standpoint of having seen it. I think it will depend on who your announcers are to start off with as to whether it goes to be overtly exciting, because an announcers that they had Total Biscuit as an announcer, and the other guy's name completely just, I completely forgotten it. Sorry, no offense meant, but they got this sort of deep understanding of how the cards work, so they were actually able to walk people through the different decks. They had previous knowledge of the deck, so once a deck was actually pulled out to play, they could, while the contestants were sitting there trying to decide whether they wanted to mulligan on their first hand or not, they were able to go into depth about, ooh, this one happens to have, say, Tyrion Fordring, or he's got this in the deck, and he's not playing this priest deck the way you would expect because he's actually using Circle of Heal to do 4 damage across the board to everybody because he has XYZ, and I can't remember the card name. I think it's Valerian or something like that, but having that kind of interaction is awesome. I think what really makes Hearthstone stand out, though, in a potential esports category is the fact that the developers did a really good job making the game feel physical. This means that when a card hits the deck, ooh, you feel it.
I don't know how much we're lagging his design aims from moment one.
Sorry, what was that? You kind of broke up on me.
I think we may be struggling here with the interwebs and hotel connections. But you mentioned one of the major tenets of the game is that it feels physical. And I'm simply pointing out that indeed, and as we saw in the presentations, that's actually been one of the major design ethoses and goals since minute one.
Yes.
And in fact, the steps they went through meant that all the cards were physically designed before the web interface was created.
Well, there's an interesting thing. I really hope that everyone has had a chance to actually watch their fireside chat, because the reality is I love to see the iterations that a developer goes through to get to their end goal, because it shows me where they started out in philosophy. It shows me what they were interested in, what they weren't interested in, what worked, what didn't work. And not every development company out there does this. Not every development company can do it because some games are just way too massive to try to break down the way that they did in Hearthstone. Now, they had listed 5 particular goals that they wanted to match with Hearthstone. And one of them, as we had stated, is the fact that the cards needed to feel physical. There needs to be something that lets you know, I am playing a card and it means something other than, this is pixels on my screen. It's pixels on my screen. So they did that through the different animations and things. For example, I think one of the things I didn't comment on, which I was kind of hoping they would, is that what really makes a lot of the cards stand out for me is the voices applied to the card. You know, when you throw down a Murloc, as much as you may despise them with a passion, Ms., you hear the Murloc and your brain links back to that day you first met Murlocs and learned that they will kill you. Which is probably the number one reason most people don't like Murlocs, is because they used to have a really tight-knit spawn location and they would eat people at a low level. You learned a very serious distaste for Murlocs at a low level. But anyway, you have the voices, which give you an audio sort of feedback. You have the animations from the card, which give you a video feedback. And the boards that they had set up, because he said the... was it Eric Dodds? Yeah, it was Eric Dodds who was pointing out the fact that he wanted it to feel like, well, what happens if you were to open a box in a tavern in World of Warcraft and put the box down? You know, you can have that physical feedback from the game. But I think what just makes it really pop for me is when I'm waiting for an opponent to make a turn and there's nothing else I can do. I can't plan anything. Depending upon the board I'm on, I'll pick up a rock, put it in my catapult, fling it. I'll light a fire, play the gong. The board itself is interactive, which I think is brilliant. To be perfectly honest, when I first started playing Hearthstone, that was the thing that made me actually go, this is an okay game. Granted, over the past 2 weeks or so, my opinion on Hearthstone has changed ever so slightly. But yes.
So, I think one thing with Hearthstone that they mentioned, talking about the design principles, is indeed that it has to be accessible. And of course, the balancing act is often accessibility versus depth. And depth can both be complexity, strategy, but it can also make a difference in terms of long-term playability. Some of the chats we've had up until now, Pseudo, have touched upon how deep is this game? How much strategy is there versus how much card draw? And to what degree will they be able to expand this in the future? Now, I think it's fair to say they made some pretty bold steps in addressing future changes in the game. And of course, couples spring to mind. Perhaps the first one to touch on might be adventures.
Okay, well, we did have a love. Hello, Vishtorm. We did have someone ask us to look into things like the adventures that are coming up, the expansions, things like that. Now, I'll be perfectly blunt with you. When it came to the concept of adventures, it kind of took me back, and oh man, I cannot remember. I kind of want to go Settlers of Catan. Even though I've never played the game, I kind of hear Gazimov's voice in my head going Settlers of Catan. But it almost seems to me that they're going to be doing, I think, something slightly like Feria does. Now, when you have quote unquote quests where you need to go up and say tackle a theme-based deck, which is something that Magic 2014 does quite a bit if you do the single player mode. You go in, you're being told a basic story, but you're basically given a theme deck. For example, going up against the Tempest, it's a bunch of like earthquake damage and things like that. And you just have to survive cards that are based around that theme. I think they're probably going to do something a little bit like that. I don't think they're going to go to the extreme that, say, Fairy does and actually have a hex board and go, learn how to play on a board as well as with cards. I don't think they're going to do that because I think that removes the accessibility. But I didn't see them say they mentioned they're going to have these adventures, but like the big focus was on the fact that it's coming. Open beta is coming. We've got changes coming, you know, like mind control's going up to 10 mana. That would seem to be their
Thankfully.
bigger focus. Aw, has mind control owned you?
And me and everyone else that's run up against a priest in late game. Excuse me.
Fair enough.
However, the most interesting thing to me about some of the announcements, and let's start with adventures.
Okay.
Is it's really setting the scene and laying out a table for future offerings. I think the great quote in there somewhere was around the fact of we're looking at cards with new effects and we're looking at new mechanics, but we're going to leave the mechanics till the expansions. Therefore, that tells us two things straight away. Firstly, what they're doing with the adventures and the award of cards from the event is designed to strongly interact with the metagame. I think there's an article out there on Polygon that mentions exactly that same fact, and indeed they alluded to it. And it must be mentioned as a brief aside, obviously I've been running around at BlizzCon, but panels take place in 4 places at once, and I'm not very good at cutting myself into 4 pieces. So not every single bit of content that went out at BlizzCon I've yet had the opportunity to consume. So we'll see if I've missed anything along the way as we go through what I'm aware of. But with a clear aim and focus of beating adventures to actually obtain cards, and the cards then having the ability to put a shift into the metagame. And we start to get back into some of this constantly evolving mechanic, let's say Magic has with its balance curve and everything else. And I really see that as having a really strong and positive influence in making the strategy of the game ever deeper. And it has to be reminded that what we're seeing at the moment is beta. It's a great beta. It's very polished. A lot of people like it. It doesn't yet have the depth of magic. Things like combat tricks, which were reactive, have been taken out because they weren't fun. So the question is, what are they going to do to layer in that additional depth to make it more compelling over a longer period, rather than just the 3 to 6 months of, hey, it's the new shiny? And I think the card introductions to adventures could play a big part in that. But that's enough of my ramble. Pseudo, your thoughts?
Well, see, I'd kind of agree with you, except for the fact that, well, I can't say except because I do agree that it is laying a foundation for the future. I mean, that is kind of the point here. They're talking about their future plans. However, there are several things that they could look at doing that kind of weren't really addressed or discussed. For example, I heard no talk about trading cards. There was no real discussion about, I've got 7 Murlocs. I want to get rid of all 7 of them. Can I trade them with somebody? There was no discussion about the interactions between the players other than, you guys get to come onto the board. You get to play around with each other. If you want to play your Elite Tauren Chieftain, you can do so and rock the world. Please don't tell Mizpah that I just did that. But, as far as I'm concerned, the way that they are going about this, they're focusing so heavily, as I said, on the one-to-one player v player. They're focusing upon trying to keep things entertaining, and I think the phrase that he used was a bit of whimsy, a bit of fanciful to it, which I think is going to actually make it stay sharp. There is no two-headed giant, so to speak. Which unfortunate, because sometimes that's fun. There is, like I said, I'm kind of worried about not knowing more about the trading of cards, because I think that could have a serious impact on the actual future side of how this game develops. Because if you can't have more interaction with the person you're playing against other than well played or my magic will kill you or anything else along those lines, what you're actually looking at is a game that doesn't grow the community, and people are going to become like hoarders, not like in For the Horde, but hoarders, because they can't share, and it's going to be consumed rather than repeatable content wise. Would you agree with that? Would you disagree with that?
Only in part. I think, trading the cards is one aspect, and of course we have the crafting system there to deal with being able to make use of cards and dust.
Yes.
I think it's a clear design choice not to go down that route at this point in time. But I'm sure if we go back a few weeks, people wouldn't have predicted raids and adventures. So who knows what's around the next few corners. To me, if we want to talk about the community side of things, the biggest difficulty at present is the level of communication within the community. And my biggest negative on the game by far, and I have far more positives than negatives. I spend far too much time playing this game. I quite like it. Is simply the lack of in-game communication. Unless someone is on my friends list, all I can do is send a number of canned emotes their way, backwards and forwards. And whereas I agree that can help with a lot of the difficulties with negative communication, well, if someone's going to start talking to me about the spots on their left buttock and I don't really want to know about them, I can just mute them and carry on with my game. And I think the default choice that says we'll remove communications first rather than allow communications and give people the option to get rid of idiots, that's probably the only choice that me as an individual I'm not so happy with. I can see the design logic behind it, but I think and I hope there's better solutions coming down the line.
I agree with you there. I mean, when I first started messing around with Hearthstone, I was thoroughly unimpressed. That's the best way to put it. To me, it was like, okay, this is just a fancy card game where I get to bang a gong occasionally. Fancy pictures, pretty pictures. Woo. Oh, look, something has actually hit something and something screamed and then something blew up. Oh, that's all great and dandy. It actually took, believe it or not you, Ms., because no matter how hard you tried to push it into my brain, I just kept still going, I don't know what you're talking about. It actually took the invitational for me to actually see the depth.
Yeah.
Now, that can work for them, and that can also work against them. Most people who are metagamers in trading card games, people who are incredibly interested in doing things like tournaments, who are interested in, buying like huge booster pack groups at a time, etc., are going to be able to sit there and go, hey, you know what? I've got Circle of Healing. It does this, which happens to be heal all things for 4. But if I use this card in conjunction with it, all of a sudden it's damage, which is what the deck that Atrocis had, or the priest that was in Atrocis's priest deck during the Invitational, by the way. Congratulations, dude. Well played. But I think when you have a situation where you have cards that have a bit of frivolity to it, for example, the King Muck, I think, throws bananas into people's hands, which is a hysterical concept. But when you have little things that are frivolous like that, it could be a little difficult for somebody, say, who is new to understand how to use a metagame kind of a thing. Or is it that they're putting cards into each different, we'll say, expansion, because they are planning on doing expansions that are never meant to be part of the metagame, and it's just a bit of fun and whimsy. If that's a design choice, I'd like to know, so that people who are just starting out don't sit there and go, okay, I don't quite get this.
I think you simply have to look at the overall effect of a card, and sometimes these items that might appear to be whimsy are actually there for balance, but it's done so in an amusing and enlightening way. I mean, if, for example, the healing bananas didn't exist, that card would actually be somewhat overpowered. So that's actually needed to put the card into a balanced state, to use that one example. Now, there are still cards that are more balanced and less balanced. There are still some things that are still just going to be horrible, and why is someone playing it? And still things that if you've got in your deck, well, you're going to be playing them if you're Class X. And one of the simple reasons for that is this is still beta. People keep going, it's finished, let's have the game already. It's not.
No.
There's still card changes to undertake. There's the experience of 500,000 hands, which can't be gained in internal testing, which then needs to be absorbed, put into decision making, and put back out again. So I mean, I'm fully expecting the open beta phase to now be a long one, starting next month, where they start to introduce adventures, and where they start to introduce, and here's the segue to the next topic, the new ranking system.
Oh. Now here's...
New ranking system makes me smile, but over to you, Pseudo.
No. I want to know why it makes you smile.
Because it allows for a more granular demonstration of where somebody is at in their current playstyle, deck, and personal capacity versus the others around them. Particularly of note is when you get to the upper tiers. You can actually lose stars by losing a game as well. Now, I started talking about stars and tiers. Do we need to run through the basic mechanics of this? Because not everyone will have seen it.
Well, it is kind of worth actually discussing a little bit about how things like the arena works, how you do things in a draft scenario, which is basically their version of arena, which I'm going to take my hat off to them and just state, when you're trying to do something online and you're looking for a solution to a time-based problem that drafts usually tend to be, they did a brilliant job of sorting that out. But anyway, yeah. Go ahead, take a moment and explain the arenas, because you set foot into it. I'm a different type of TCG player, and I'll get into that and how that is impacted by what Hearthstone has created.
I've lost a lot of your words in the last couple of sentences.
Explain arena.
Talk arena, not so much the new ranking system.
Well, explain arena, and then explain the ranking system.
Okay, so arena is the concept of saying, I am going to build a deck, and I'm going to play with my deck for as long as I can to be as good as I can be. Now, when you're playing arena, you get your deck, and you go into battle against someone else, and you record your wins and your losses. And once you've achieved the heady heights of 3 losses, you're out of the arena. Your core aim, or up until now your core aim, has been to try and obtain 9 wins. So you're looking at a better to a 3-to-1 win ratio. And you'll quickly find that building out certain decks, getting your draft right, gives you a reasonable chance of getting up, say, to 5, 6, 7 plus. Building your deck wrong, well, that makes that a little tricky. And the more wins you have at the moment, the better the opposition you're actually facing. But they've now started to come up with a method. In fact, I'll backtrack for a moment. Let's talk about the draft itself. What you actually get is you get a choice of 3 cards, you pick one. You get another choice of 3 cards, you pick one. I'm safe to not repeat that sentence 27 more times. And then you pick your wild card. Essentially, you're making choices of 3. Give yourself a deck 30.
Right. Let me just step in because you are cutting off just a little bit, and I will do a recap of the explanation of what a draft actually is, at least within Hearthstone. The entire purpose behind it is to build your deck, but you build it by having to select 3 cards, or one of 3 cards, I should say, that shows up. You have to make the decision of, do I take this creature that's a 2/7, knowing full well that you may not see it again? Or if you're really lucky, you'll see it so often your head's going to explode and you're left with horrible choices. I mean, it's a matter of balancing out. I've just got these many creatures. Maybe I need some kind of spell, or I need some kind of spell protection or a heal or something like that. I mean, there's different types of decks out there. So the draft is actually you going through building your deck from cards that are handed to you. You don't actually get to sit there and say, these are all my cards, I'm going to build a deck. You don't get that option. So it does kind of keep things fair and balanced in a gameplay system, because if you find yourself with a, we'll say, banging deck, you know, a deck that really seems to own up, there's still going to be somebody else out there who will probably get something that'll counter your specific deck, which is a big part of their balance system, which is something we'll discuss in a bit. But anyway, that's the arena. So now you get to discuss your ranking. By the way, Miz, what rank are you currently?
I don't know if it's reset since I last logged in. I think last time I logged in, was I Diamond 3 or had I touched into Masters? I'm actually not sure. I haven't been able to log in since before BlizzCon. I'll do so in a moment and answer the question.
Isku wants to point out that it has not reset, so wherever you were is where you are
is where
now.
I'll still be. Good.
Well, he thinks.
Good. So they've talked about rank play changes, and it's a new system. The idea is it's going to make the granularity a little easier to deal with. Really see where people are, and it's going to be. Sorry, Pseudo. Go.
I just apologize. Isku is another female gamer, which I didn't realize. So I had to send little pumpkin hearts out to another female gamer.
There's many out there. It's nothing unusual. So it's going to be monthly, and everyone's going to start as an angry chicken. Now, as we all know, angry chickens, if they get a rage, become quite volatile. However, when you're a rank 25 angry chicken, you're going to be matched against other 25 players. Now, let's just point out, we're into rankings. This is not just arena. This is now constructed play. And this, for me, is where the most... it's where the greatest skill-based game is. You can play arena in a very, very skillful way, but you'll occasionally get a better draft or a worse draft, and you can only mitigate that to a certain degree. But of course, when you're playing constructed ranked play, the only variable that you have to deal with is the cards available to you. And whereas you might not have 17 legendaries in your set to choose from,
you wouldn't want to put that many in your deck to begin with.
Exactly. Just having all the quote-unquote best flavor of the month cards does not win you games. A balanced deck with a good mana curve wins you games.
I also want to point out that we may want to stop the presses across the world. Mizpah and I actually agree on something. I firmly believe that when it comes to constructed play, that is where the real high level challenge. To me, constructive play would be equated to raiding. within an MMO game. It is the one that requires a lot more knowledge, it requires a lot more dedication, and it also requires a skill level that takes you from just saying, well, how do I play what's been given to me, to how do I build something that I can then play and show how I know how to play what has been given to me, kind of a thing. It just seems to bump it up to the next level. So I agree with Mizpah on the fact that constructed play is the
Okay,
most complex and also probably the most entertaining and fun, if not frustrating. But the fact that you and I agree on something, I just figure deserves like neon
fair
lights
enough.
somewhere.
So let me run through what this actual rank play changes look like. So everyone starts every month. A month is now, I believe, a season. At rank 25 as an angry chicken, and you're going to be matched against players at the same ranking as you. And you win a game, and you get a star. It's kind of like the chart you probably had once upon a time when you were in school. And they're making a point of basically you win games, you get stars. You win streaks of games, you get bonus stars. I believe it's 5 stars to a rank. And as you acquire enough stars, you rank up. So you start to work your way through the 25s, through the 24s, through to the 20s, even up into the 10s. But as you travel along that journey, two things happen. The first thing that happens is you're now going to start to be playing against better and better players. So, sure, building a flavor of the month deck, let's say you build OTK Hunter, and that deck will win a lot of games by virtue of the deck is a good deck. And if you're playing people which have decks that aren't so well constructed, you're probably quickly going to hit rank 15. This is guesswork on my part. But all of a sudden, you're now playing a deck, a player with a good deck. And
Okay, what you
if
just
poor value all the wrong choices,
said. Whoa.
a brick wall.
Okay. Mizpah is officially severely breaking up there. MMO buff to
And what did you
Mizpah.
get?
MMO buff to Mizpah, are you there?
I'm. I can. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
I could hear every word you said then, and I replied.
Yes, but for some reason it was a little odd. Um,
Okay.
I kind of want to interrupt your rant because Ryzen and Isku um, are having a bit of a conversation, and I want to get your thoughts on this. And I will add my thoughts before I let you speak because this is something I think that you know a lot
Fair
more, Matt, more than I do.
enough, but I do want to finish that ranked explanation before we change topics.
Okay, well, then what you're going to need to do is explain where you left off, which was in the discussions about going up against people who are at level 15 with you or harder play, stars.
Okay, so hopefully we've got to the point where people are saying, okay, I start at level 25, I win stars, I go up in rank towards level 1, which isn't actually the final rank. However, you might just get a very good deck. You might go online, you might find a deck, and there's a deck out there called OTK Hunter I use as an example. And that deck is going to win games. If a average or even a less than average player plays that exact deck, they're going to win more games than their personal skill level should indicate. And they're going to climb up the ladder. And let's say they hit level 15. But all of a sudden, you're going to be playing a good deck as an average or below par player, and you'll be playing good players with good decks. And at that point, you're going to hit a brick wall and come unstuck quite quickly. So you're going to end up lurking at that level for a while, whilst you start to fill in the gaps perhaps in your own playstyle, and look at things like value and card trading and timing and tempo and getting all these concepts right that are really needed. So I feel that the level of granularity in the system plays a huge part in actually acclimatizing for player skill, as opposed to simply for I'm running flavor of the month deck X, because that will only take you so far. And a couple of nice things happen along the journey. So we get new artwork, new card backs. I think, if memory serves me correctly, you get a card back awarded at the end of the season or the month to take into the next season, where you start again at 25. And also, two huge things. At high ranks, you lose stars. So you can't just run a deck all the way up and sit there forevermore. You need to maintain your win ratios. And beyond rank 1 is that special rank that few of us will ever see, Legend. And if you get Legend, you get a number in your icon, I think it's a star, showing you your exact rank in your region. So my assumption based on that is that's going to show us the top, let's say, 100 players in each region. That's
Well, the
not
number
gonna be
that they
very
put
easy
up
to
was
get.
something like 256 was in the star that they had up on their thing.
Didn't
So
see the visual. Fantastic. Okay.
my assumption is it's actually probably going to be something along that small bit variable kind of a thing, 256 and up. But it may actually be 1,000 and up for all we know. We don't know for the specifics of it. The thing that appeals to me about the way that they're setting up doing these ranking systems is that it's by month.
I'm in two minds, actually, on by month. I do wonder if by month is just a little too short, and I take that from StarCraft ranked play. Now, it might be that because obviously an individual game of Hearthstone is so much faster, but a month...
Exponentially. Well, actually, I guess it depends on whether you're Zerging or...
Yes, it does. That's a whole new discussion. We won't go there.
We're not going to go into that discussion on this show.
Anyway, I do wonder whether a month is long enough. I mean, consider a scenario whereby... I don't know, you're at a month. Personally, I would like to see something like, and this is gut reaction, 6-week seasons, 8-week seasons, but we'll have to see how it actually plays out.
The thing that makes me like the fact that it goes by a 1-month season is the fact that it actually adds accessibility. When you start dealing in anything that doesn't have a nice round figure to it, like, say, 2 months, if I was going to bump it, I'd say bump it to 2 months, because that, to a casual player, they go, I get it, every 2 months. Instead of them walking in, say they had a vacation or work got busy or they got married or, their dog had kittens, which could happen for all I know. Let's just say some random event happens and they decide to go play. They can have a good idea of how long it's going to be before the season ends just by looking at the calendar. Now, that has some marketing genius to it, but at the same time, if you start to put in weird ones like 6, it cuts in half of a month, and you're starting to sort of separate the players and turn casual people away a little easier or a little quicker by keeping it at the 1 month or 2 month ratio. I'd like the 1 month because it just seems to ring with me. Because I'm not an arena player.
I think 2 is a little long. I think 1 is a little short.
We're back to disagreeing. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I never left. But at the end of the day, we'll have to actually play through the new system and actually see how it feels in practice, because this is just guesswork.
It's going to be. And the thing is, I expect, based on the way that they fully explained out their development process through prototyping and card design and things like that, and even how they balance their cards, which I thought was interesting. I don't believe we're going to see the quote-unquote end of the open beta anytime soon. I have to agree with several people within our channel who have stated this beta is probably going to be a little long. It needs to be, in my personal opinion. For them to not do a long beta is to, I think, do the development a disservice, especially with the amazing directions they've gone. Now, I think we should just quickly address a couple things from the channel. First off, hello to you, Zidness, and hello to you, Oskask. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. And also, hello, Hive Leader. Hello, everybody. Isku and Ryzen got into a discussion when you were talking about the ranking system and things like that. And I also want to point out there's nothing wrong with being an angry chicken. One of my old guild ranks used to be Toasted Puppy. Don't ask.
I'm sure there's a story there somewhere.
Oh, there is. But when we were discussing about the difference between, say, a draft deck versus a constructed deck, Ryzen pointed out it can be very painful not having Ragnaros in your hand. And Isku felt that there was a bit of a stumbling block that is reached because it seems that, at least to her, building decks or a strong deck is very difficult if you don't spend a decent amount of time playing the game itself or forking out money, because you can buy packs in a variety of different ways.
Ooh.
However, what I want to point out for you, Isku, is this one of the things that they actually pointed out. I love metrics, and they brought metrics to this, conversation. And they showed that of the top ranking deck, I think it was 43% of the decks were made without purchasing a single card, which I thought was interesting. I do, however, feel that there is an impetus, and this is an actual slight genius on the design part. And we see this actually in a lot of TCGs that have people purchase packs. Fairy doesn't do it this way, but they want you to sign in on a daily basis. They want you to do a daily quest. Soulforge does it. You want to sign in because you have a chance at building up the currency to buy yourself a new pack. Now, I don't think Blizzard chose wrong here. I tend to get a little frustrated with games where you sit there going, I'm never going to see a legendary in my deck. I'm still waiting for my Tauren Chieftain, by the way. Come on, people. Where is my Elite Tauren Chieftain? I watched BlizzCon. But anyway,
Have you put your code in?
Not yet. No, of course not.
Well,
Because
you won't have your Elite Tauren Chieftain then.
That's just too easy. Actually, I haven't received a code yet.
You have, but we'll talk about that later.
No, the thing that gets me is the fact that Hearthstone is not your average TCG. Most TCGs that I play can take an hour to 2 hours to play a hand. Hearthstone was designed to almost be tiny nuggets of wish fulfillment, instant gratification, and the games don't take as long as a typical TCG does. So
let's just touch on that for a moment, because I'm sure I misheard you, because I'm sure a moment ago what I actually heard was a TCG can take an hour to play a hand. I'm guessing by that should have been either a game or a mishear on my part.
No, many TCGs out there can take a long time to play.
Fine. So
I should say a
let's
round.
look at, again, we go back to design principles. Let's go back to design principles for a moment. Obviously, they've known since day one this will be coming out on other platforms. And those other platforms are not just the iPad, but they're now going to be the iPhone and the Android. Now, the moment you're on a mobile device, you've got players on the go. So you're going to need to bring the average game time down. And I'm guessing you want to easily be able to consume a game inside of 15 minutes. It puts it in the bracket where I've just got a few minutes, I can do X. And that's the first step they're going to have in getting player attention. If you look at MMO designs, it's that third login that the designers are actually looking for in terms of boosting retention ratios. And I don't know the numbers for TCGs, I've never researched them, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to find it's that third play session is the one where someone actually makes up their mind, are they going to play the game or not? And that'll be why games like Faria have the login daily to get your currency to buy your packs, and Soulforge and a host of others. Here they've addressed that mechanic by having your daily quests. You're going to want to keep logging in to do your daily quest, to get your gold, to get your packs, which then means you can build out those decks and start to work towards that fact that 43% of people have got winning decks without ever buying cards. So all of this stuff is already tied together in terms of design principles. And no one decision is right by itself, but all the decisions interlaced together give it a cohesive whole that works.
Which is why I firmly believe that the 1 month iteration for their different play tournaments is brilliant. Because it means...
And you may well be right. We'll need to see it. I'll need to see it in reality, because my internal gut reaction thinks it's just slightly too short to allow for long enough competitive runs to achieve maximum rankings without a overstated time sink during the month.
Well, to be fair, though, if you're going to do something on a competitive level, it makes no difference whether you're looking at doing something like playing cricket or whether you're looking at doing like a StarCraft tournament or a Minecraft tournament or whatever. The amount of time and dedication you put into it can dramatically impact your ranking within that game. So if you are looking to be one of the, we'll say, the top 100 in a month, you're going to time sync. You're not going to be logging into World of Warcraft to play the game. You're going to be logging into Hearthstone to play the game. Now, the fact that they're taking it onto the mobile through, iPhones and Android means that you can do it while you're on the train going to work. So, they're offering an expanded playability. And, if you're looking to be in those top tiers, you gotta put the work in. Otherwise, we're looking at a very frivolous game.
There's a distinction here between... I'll reference StarCraft laddering for a moment because it's a good analogy that springs to mind.
Well, it's what they're basing a lot of their tournament play on.
Ooh, not sure. Not sure on that one.
Well, there's similarities, I should say, as pointed out by them when they were introducing
but
it.
I don't think the MMR or anything else is going to run in a similar fashion. We shall see. I may have missed some infos there. So, if I'm trying to ladder in StarCraft, yes, I am going to want to play, I don't know, let's pick an arbitrary number.
10.
Let's even pick a high arbitrary number.
1,000.
100 games in the season.
Aww.
However, it's actually not necessarily an advantage to me to play 500 games in that self-same season. Because once I have a rolling MMR, my win ratio, my percentage and who I'm beating becomes much more important. My win-loss ratio matters more to me than how many games have I played. And I would hope that the same thing is going to be true here. Okay, now if it's 5 stars per rank, 25 ranks, 125 games, win-loss ratios, I could actually easily see something like 150 games. Let's actually take that down. Take that 125, which comes out of 1 star per rank for 25, down to 100 to allow for win streaks.
Okay.
But let's just say for a moment, let's see how good or bad my mental arithmetic is. If I'm playing 100 games, what are we going to assume? Are we going to assume 15 minutes per game? Is that a long or a short average? What do people think?
For me, it depends on who I'm going up with. But yeah, I would probably put it at about 15 to 18, but just to make it easy, about 18.
Okay, so
or
if
15.
I say 100 games, 15 minutes.
150 hours.
That's 20.
No, I'm doing my math.
It's 25 hours.
It's 25 hours, which is what most people play,
It's 25
like
hours. Now,
their
if I look
MMO.
at that- yeah. Now, if I look at that and I divide that out, what's that? That's 0.8 of an hour a day over an average month.
That's for the playing side of it.
That's actually not a terrible time sink.
It's not a terrible time sink, but at the same time, if you're just playing, you're not spending the time to open new decks. You're not spending the time to play around with decks. You're not spending the time going through all of your portfolios, looking at the various card pages that you have, deciding, is this going to work? Is that going to work? Is this not going to work? There's an awful lot behind the scenes other than just playing the game.
Yes, there is. And what we don't yet know is things like, you've done 15, you've put 15 wins in a row together. What is that? 20 stars? 25 stars? How big a jump does that make? So, we might not need an hour. I would suggest that if you're going to take this seriously, an hour a day of competitive play is probably a sensible aim. But that means it's possible to play this game with, say, an MMO and take it seriously.
Well, it's sort of...
If you start to need to play 4 or 5 hours a day, not so much.
Now, I firmly believe that, this is going to be Blizzard's, I guess in a way, answer to EVE in a really, really weird, very, very far-fetched way. Because many people I know who played EVE and another MMO at exactly the same time because it takes forever to fly places and it just goes on and on. So you run missions while you're running dungeons or running a raid or, what have you. And I could totally see in an environment where, you're running a dungeon in an MMO of any variety, and then while you're in flight to the next location, start a Hearthstone game.
Yeah, you see, I'd never actually choose to do that because I would always want to have 110% of my focus on what I'm doing. So I would rather say I am now playing Hearthstone for 2 hours and have no distractions and utterly concentrate on the game and my play.
Well, that's
And that
you.
must be more effective than keep darting in and out for 15 minutes here and there. But it's a different playstyle choice.
That's the thing. I do believe that the type of game that Hearthstone is actually allows that kind of flexibility.
Oh, it
You could
does.
have the one who between waiting for Hearthstone matches runs a dungeon, and you can have the one who's running a dungeon or farming or just sitting there waiting for a raid to
And
start playing
I'm just
a
saying,
game.
if I find anybody playing a Hearthstone game whilst waiting for a pull in a raid,
I'll
there
have
will be a
problems with it.
conversation to be had.
Oh, I'll have problems with it. Are you kidding me? But I'm saying that the option's there because I don't know if you actually did this, Miz.
Yep.
But one of my
Yep.
favorite things that I did when I was playing World of Warcraft consistently as my game of choice was play Peggle as I flew from place to place. This was back before we had flying mounts, so this was the day of age where you were in Stranglethorn Vale, your Hearthstone was down, and yet you needed to get up to, I believe it was the Ghostlands where not ZG, but the other one was up near where the Blood Elf start zone is. But anyway, and I'd sit there and I'd play Peggle. And that was entertaining to me because I knew it was going to take me like 20 minutes to fly up the coast. I might as well do something fun and exciting while doing it instead of just sitting there going, la, 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 la. So,
Exactly. So I think the one thing this illustrates in this conversation, though, is the way they've set out the ranking system. And as a brief divergence, Zidnis, yes, in some games you're going to be playing 12 hours a day to be at a top esports level. And I'm sure people will be doing that for Hearthstone. I'm not convinced it will take the same depth of the same time sink. And I say that simply because you're not training Twitch reflexes.
I'd have to agree with you there. Twitch reflexes requires a whole different level of training. And I want to sneeze, but I can't.
I mean, the example would be if you know the plays, you know where the value is. I would imagine there comes a point in time when a good player is a good player, whether they play for 5 hours that week or for 20. But we shall see. But what it does give us is a huge depth in terms of the possible. The art of the possible here has now been increased with the announcements. Because not only do we have adventures and solo PvE to change the metagame, to keep things flowing, a little bit like the constant iterations in Magic, we now also have bigger expansions promised where, if I'm interpreting correctly, I'm expecting entire new card mechanics. Some people have said, well, we don't have the ability to have the interrupts and things from Magic, or the reactive play, and therefore it's less strategic depth. Well, what if they're coming later on down the line?
Well, see,
what if combat tricks go through another iteration?
That's the thing. One of the things that I love about Hearthstone is the fact that there isn't that gimmick. Now, this does mean that it is not as, say, complicated as something like MTG, where you have what I would term to be 3 action turns. You play your turn, you pick who you're attacking with. You can have interrupts done at any time, or I should say certain instants done at a time. Interrupts or special spells could be used on attack. You can have your defense, and then you can lay cards down again. There is this, as they were talking about, it's an incredibly complex interaction.
Not to mention the healing at the end of every round.
Oh God, yes. And then, you're having to keep track of like counters on cards. You're having to keep track of all this other crazy stuff that's going on as well. And one of the things that I love about Hearthstone is the fact that they do not have that. What ends up happening to me is the depth of the game is no longer so much about, almost in a way, doing Twitch reactive play. Oh, you're casting a spell, I need to do this. It's no longer about that, but you have to sit there and you have to think, okay, this person has just laid down X card. okay, I have these cards available to me. I have, we'll say, 15 cards left in my deck. I know that I'm going to have a 1 in 7 chance of picking up X card that I'm going to play here, but I also know that I'm playing up against, we'll say, a priest deck, and I know that priest decks tend to, on average, have, of all things, mind control.
Yeah.
You get to sit there and you have time to think about it without it impacting the speed of play. This is why I said some card games can take a long time to play, because you're not just planning out your next move. You're planning out your reactions immediately to the moves that are coming your way. And that actually adds time to the gameplay. And these guys have specifically said they didn't want to do so much of that. And I like that, because I liked one of the most interesting parts of the Invitational was watching the players, not their cards. But they're players. Because in a StarCraft thing, you see them twitching and they're watching their actions per minute. One guy I think got up to like 190 or something actions per minute. It was really fast play. But anyway, you're not looking at that. You're looking at them thinking. And Atrocious. Gosh, what was his name? Because
Atosis.
Atosis, thank you. Atosis, one of the most engaging things to me was I was watching him as he was in the final. It was the last head-to-head, where they were 2-2 with each other, and with names are leaving my head right now. Corparium. Thank you. But anyway, I was watching and I saw his jaw twitching, and I'm like, that guy is in deep thought, and that is really fascinating to me. So don't pick on me, Ryzen. It's been a long day.
So Pseudo, I'm doing a little bit of clock watching.
Oh.
And going, what haven't we yet touched on?
Well, let's see. We've pretty much covered a heck of a lot of things. A lot of things are being fixed. I really want to point out, if you have not seen their fireside chat from BlizzCon, I hope that they fully release it for you to watch. Because to be perfectly blunt,
I doubt they will, Pseudo, because the backlash from people that have bought the virtual ticket simply to see
it could be 10 years from now. I don't care. I don't care if it's 10 years from now or not. I just want people to see Eric Dodds and Ben Brode and how enthusiastic they were about everything. I think Ben Brode kept going, I am so excited every time he got brought up onto the stage. It made no difference what his topic was, and apparently he's like that all the time. But anyway, we've discussed a lot of the development. We've discussed a lot of the future. We've discussed the potential mechanical changes, as well as why we believe they've made a lot of their design choices. I'm going to leave it to the channel to see if there's anything in particular they wanted us to touch on, because it's just amazing. And yes, I feel very, very sad for Jaedong. I'm not even, it was such a painful watching that WSC thing. But yes, anyway, if you have any particular questions in regards to Hearthstone or anything you feel that we should have touched on, please, by all means, let me know now. Yeah, I feel sad for Flash. But I don't think we haven't really covered things. One of these days, Mizpah and I are actually going to probably play Hearthstone against each other. And hello, Marshmallow. We'll play Hearthstone against each other, and you'll actually get a chance to see someone who is incredibly casual within Hearthstone. That would be me. Going up against somebody who puts a lot of time and effort into it and has played it a lot. Oh, we'll stream this. I see absolutely no reason with not streaming him and I going at each other.
In fact, what we'll probably do is I might have a word with Mr. Marsh, who's just popped in to say hello, and maybe we can even ask Mr. Marsh to commentate.
Oh, that would be hysterical. But yes,
what do you think, Marsh?
I think it would be really, really creative, because I think what would end up happening is we'd have to go into Duo Arena. It would just be too funny. I don't think it's like that, Hive. No. And this, I will tell you guys, it would not surprise me if in the future, like next year or, whatever time, and I leave it to you guys as the community to go ahead and start this. By all means, take Team Pseudo or take Team Miz. Take your vote, because we bat heads on a lot of issues. We see things so differently. Feel free to vote for me. Vote for me. Oh, thanks, Marsh.
So
But yeah.
let's
Sunday, Sunday,
let's let's
Sunday. Sorry.
let's make that actually happen. Pseudo, let's give me a couple of weeks once I've got back into the cold environs of the UK. And we'll make that happen.
Yeah. I think
Should
that
be
would
good.
be fun. We could put it on a top draw show.
Okay, we
But
can and we shall.
I would definitely want someone else commentating, because, yeah. It's very hard. And as much as the thing is with you, Miz, you will sit there and you will tell me your strategy. Without even realizing, if I do this, I will get this result. If I do this. So I think it would be fair if we had our separate booths. So
Well,
speak.
tell you what we're going to do now. I'm going to attempt to just sum everything up in a few sentences, if I possibly can. Then we probably need to go our separate ways. So what have we got? Well, Hearthstone, a bunch of new stuff has been announced. They're talking about continuing card changes. They've talked a lot about the design precepts for the game, where they're going, and why they've made the choices they have. A lot more has been revealed. Now we've seen details on not only iPad, but mobile platforms, with love going both to the Android and to the iPhone. They've elaborated on the PvE metagame continuing or being enhanced through the use of adventures. Something I'm very much looking forward to getting my hands on. And seeing how the cards introduced from that are specifically intended to change out the metagame. And of course, with no feedback on the release frequency for adventures, it gives them a lever from a design perspective to put constant change into the community.
Mm.
They've then talked a little about elaborating on the ranking systems, and they've really done a very good job, I think, in producing a much more granular system that allows for a real separation between, I just play casually and this is where I'm at, and I'm really trying to compete at the top end, but giving every player a reward and some instant feedback for what they're doing. I love the ideas of the card backs. I love the ideas of the, help, was it 500 games and you get your golden hero? So much new stuff coming down the line. All in all, I think Hearthstone, whether it's more casual or more serious, is a good place to be.
I have to completely and utterly agree with you. And I honestly think the world's about to implode, because that's twice in a show that you and I have really agreed on something. I think that the way that they have designed Hearthstone, the choices that they're making, and the way that they are going into the development for the future, it lends itself to accessibility to the metagamer. It lends itself to the casual, I just want to spend 15 minutes every 3 or 4 days playing a game, or I just want to play with some friends. But it also is bringing an AI element to it. I know a lot of card players who only play online card games against the AI. They hate playing against their friends. And I like the fact that all three types of players are catered to with the 3 buttons when you start Hearthstone: play, practice, arena. And I think that itself just sums up the philosophy of where Hearthstone is going. If they keep up this momentum, I'll have their back.
So, folks, Pseudo, I can't see the screen. Or else I could talk very quickly like this and try and get words out without actually causing them to stumble over each other, so no one can hear what I'm actually saying. I'm probably slightly better off handing back to yourself.
I am here, and I am going to state to you all, thank you so much for joining us for our next episode of Top Draw. We will have another one next Wednesday. I cannot reveal anything about that show just yet. I'm still trying to work magic and pull strings behind the scenes. You know, twitchy eye face, or sideway eye roll. But anyway, at the same time, we will have Mizpah back next week in the UK, which is going to be so nice, because we'll have a better connection. We do have coming up Friday Cosmotronic. Now, we didn't have Cosmotronic last week because of the fact that BlizzCon was on, and it just seemed a bit complicated trying to do things with Cosmotronic while all 3 of us were watching BlizzCon. So we're going to be doing a lovely Cosmotronic this Friday. We will be discussing the Esper. We will be discussing the Warrior. We will be discussing the things that have been dropped. But Mizpah, has something special planned. And you're just going to have to wait.
Indeed, but you may not have it for this Friday because I need to look at timing, Pseudo. I'm not actually sure if I'm physically on a plane at that moment in time.
Whether you join me and Gazzy on Friday, I'll leave it up to the Chua to decide.
Sure, but how about we give people a little tease as to what's coming without the details?
Ooh, how does one tease without giving away details about what we've got to drop for them?
Well, how about if I simply say that I sat down and had a one-on-one discussion with Brad, who runs out the dungeon team. And there is a ton of new information coming on dungeons. It is new, it is shiny, it's excited, and it's all about redacted.
And this is where I also turn to Miz and I make incredibly rude gestures at him because he had his one-on-one. And I wanted to be there. I didn't want to be in the heat. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. But anyway, yes, so this is where we're going to call it. I don't think we're going to have an after show. I really miss them. I can't wait till Miz comes back because the after shows tend to be just as engaging and entertaining as the shows itself. But I'm going to send him on his merry way because he needs to ensure he finishes his breakfast. And he also needs to get something to me so that I can make some redacted.
Yep, I need to go find breakfast, write some articles, and discuss whether or not I can actually connect to Hearthstone with this very interesting hotel connection.
You know, that would be a rather interesting thing. How much bandwidth? Yeah. That'd be crazy cool. But anyway, on that particular note, my friends, I bid you a fond adieu. Please make certain that you are following us all over the place. And we now have a Reddit. There are going to be changes on our Reddit, but we r/r/MMOBuff. And there are going to be some rather interesting things occurring there. You're going to want to keep your eyes on it. And let's see. Don't forget our YouTube to subscribe. Don't forget all the other good stuff. And yeah, I'll let Mizpah say bye-bye. And then I will give my fond farewell. And then we'll speak with you guys
usual,
Friday.
Currently from LA, this is Mizpah signing off.
It's so sad that it keeps breaking up. But yes, and this is Pseudo saying toodaloo, my friends, and Swagzilla has much stuff to be swagging away. So pay attention, watch the stuff, and yeah, we'll see you soon.